little different. Okay, so simplifying exponents. These are the 7 rules we're going to use. We're not going to use any other rules. Sometimes we'll use multiple rules, but these are the 7 rules. But before we do that, what is an exponent? Well, exponent is just repeated multiplication, right? 3 to the 5th power means you're going to multiply the base 5 times. Three times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, 5 times, right? What does that equal? 243. All of those are the same. 3 to the 5th is the same as 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is the same as 243. Same thing with let's see. So we got, I think it's 2 to the 8th. 2 to the 8th is 256. Okay. 81. 81 you can write a couple different ways. 81, you can say 9 squared, which is 9 times 9, right? Or you can say 3 to the 4th power. Each one of those is okay. Each one of those will make 81 using exponents. 5 to the 4th power means 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, which when you multiply it makes 625. And then the last one, just like that. Okay, so that is not new. You guys have done that before. This part you guys have done before. Like I said, the rules you guys have done before too, but we haven't really done them in this class. So before we go on, I have a question. What is 4 squared equal to? 16, right? 4 times 4 is 16. What if I do this? So what is the answer going to be if I change the power to a -2, not a +2 anymore, -2? So some people say -16, some people say +16, some people say other things. We're going to figure out what that is equal to today. It's one of our rules, okay? So to show you, I made a table. You could tell that the bases are all the same. The bases are all 4, right? The powers are going down every time, right? 3 power, 2 power, 1 power, 0 power, and then they go to the negatives, right? So 4 to the 3rd power, which is 64, which we saw earlier. 4 squared, we just saw. 16. What is 4 to the 1st power? Whatever, yeah. So anything to the 1st power is itself. Okay, so let me ask you this question. What am I doing every time to go down the list? To go from 64 to 16 to 4. Am I adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing? Which one am I doing every time? I'm dividing, right? What am I dividing by? Right? Each one's missing a 4, right? There's 3 4s, and then there's 2 4s, and then there's 1 4. So it's dividing by 4, right? In math, everything fits a pattern. If it doesn't fit a pattern, it doesn't work. So when I ask this question, what is 4 to the 0 power? Most students will say 0. Will 0 fit the pattern here? If I divide this by 4, will that be 0? No. What will it be? 1. That's why anything, any base to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is always going to be 1. It's not going to be 0. Okay? Now we're going to the negatives. Continue the pattern. I have $1, and I divide it into 4 pieces. How much does each? 25 cents, right? Quarter. 1/4. Divided by 4 again. So let's say I take a quarter and divide it up into 4. Do I have more money or less money if I do that? Yeah, less, right? It's always going down, less and less and less. And actually, if you were to do it, it would be 1/16. So is there any negative numbers you see on that list? No. So negative exponents don't make negative numbers. They make very small numbers. So what's the trick? This is the trick we use. If it has a negative exponent, move it to the bottom and the power becomes positive. So 4 to the first. Move that to the bottom and it becomes positive 4, which is just 1/4, right? Same thing with negative 2 power. Move it to the bottom and it becomes a positive 2 power. That's the little trick you can use. Instead of having to divide by 4, we use that little trick. So that ends there, but let's do another one. How about 4 to the negative 3 power? Move it to the bottom, it becomes positive. That's 1/64, right? Yep. That's how we that's how we deal with negative exponents. We don't want negative exponents. This is how we deal with them. How do we deal with them? We make them positive. To do that, you take the elevator down. Okay, you take the elevator down. Okay? Anything to the power of 0 is always equal to positive 1. Doesn't matter what it is. Could be a letter, could be a number. Anything to the 0 power is going to be positive 1. That's rule number 4. Okay? So here are the exponent rules. Those are the same ones that are on the board. If we have a base, same base, right? Base is the big number, exponent's the small number. We're going to add the powers. So example, 5 squared times 5 to the 4th. I'm not going to multiply those powers. I'm going to add the powers. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2. Now I only have one base. A power to a power. When that happens, we multiply the powers. So let me give you an example. 5 squared to the 4th power. We're not going to add the powers. We're going to multiply this time. So this would be 5 to the 8th power. That's rule number 2. Rule number 3 is the one we just saw. What happens if I have a negative? Move it to the bottom. And it becomes positive. So let me give you an example. If I have 1/5, 5 to the negative 2 power moves to the bottom, and it becomes 1/25. Here's a question I have. What if the negative is already on the bottom? How do I make it positive? I need to make it positive, right? The rule says move it to the bottom, but what if it's already on the bottom? I can't go any lower. How do I make it positive? Move it to the top. Move it to the top. Anytime we have a negative exponent, I want to make it positive. Okay, so either move it down. If you can't move it down, move it up. Okay, rule number 4. Anything to the 0 power. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Anything to the 0 power is 1. It doesn't matter if it's a letter, if it's a number, doesn't matter. If you see a 0 power, change it to 1. Not 0, 1. Okay, that's rule number 4. Rule number 5 says, now we're dividing power. Now we're dividing. So if we're dividing and I have the same base, I subtract. So if I have the same base, I can subtract the powers. Okay, that's rule number 5. Rule number 6 is kind of the same as rule number 2, except there's 2 things inside the parentheses. What happens if I have multiple things inside the parentheses? Well, everybody inside the parentheses gets the power. So x gets the power. Y also gets the power. So example, what if I have 5 times x to the 2nd power? Well, 5 gets a power, and x gets a power. So it would be 25x squared. That's rule number 6. Rule number 7 is kind of like that, except it's just instead of multiplication, it's division. It's the same thing. Everyone gets a power. This guy gets a power, and this guy gets a power. Top gets a power, bottom gets a power. So when we turn it over, we're going to use these rules. These are the rules we're going to use. I don't have special rules that I haven't shown you yet. This is every single rule. The question is, which one do we do first? Which one do I do? Do I use rule number 1 first, or do I use rule number 7 first, or which rule do I use first, right? Here's how you do it. Anything with the parentheses, that's the first step we got to take. Then we do negatives, either move them up or move them down. And then we simplify. Okay? So anything with parentheses. Rule number 2, rule number 6, rule number 7, those are the first ones we're going to do. If we can do them. Sometimes we can't do those because there are no parentheses. Second step, we're going to use number 3. Last step is 1, 4, and 5. Okay, that's usually the order we do them in. Okay, that's all we're doing today. That's what it is, just using those steps. Okay, so how do we know if something's simplified? There are no negative exponents. There are no like bases. Like bases means x and x. We combine them. How do we combine them? By using the rules. Okay. No more parentheses left. No more 0 exponents left. If none of those things are there, then it's done. Okay, so here is our steps here. First thing we do is parentheses, then negative exponents, then simplify. So let's look at example number 1. 1a. Parentheses first. Are there any parentheses for this guy? Nope. So I don't need to use step 2, step 6, or step 7. Skip those. Next thing are negative exponents. Do I have any negative exponents? I do. I have 2 of them, right? I have a negative here and a negative here. They're already on the bottom, so where do they go? They take the elevator to the top. Rewrite it. So when I move it, it becomes positive. So x to the negative 2 becomes x squared. There's already an x there. So I have to keep that there. And then x to the negative 1 becomes x to the positive 1. What's left on the bottom? 1. Now, if there's a 1 left on the bottom, do you have to write it? No, you don't have to write it. Okay? All right, so no more negatives, no parentheses, no negatives. Now simplify. Can I do step 1? Are there any zeros? I don't think there are any 0 powers here. Oh, what about this one in the middle? Is that a 0 power or is that a different power? It's a 1, yeah. I have 3 bases and they're all the same. What am I going to do with their powers? Add them together. 2 plus 1 makes x to the 4th. Like I said, if there's a 1 on the bottom, you don't need to write it. Done. Okay. Letter B. Parentheses. Nope. Negative exponents. Yes. So let's move the elevator. Some of these need to move down. Looks like they're just moving down. Rewrite. So on top, I just have y to the first. On bottom, I have a couple other things. I have x to the first. I have x to the third. And then I have y to the first. Simplify. Simplify the x's, simplify the y's. Let's start with the x's. What am I going to do with their powers? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. Add them together. Good. So I get y to the first, x to the 4th, y to the first. Haven't touched the y's yet. How do I get the y's together? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide? Subtract them, right? So if I subtract them, I get 0. Anything to the 0 power is 1. That's one way to do it. Another way is the way we've been doing it before, right? Giant 1. Right? We've done it that way too. So now I have 1 over x to the 4th. Anything divided by itself makes a giant 1. That's why there's a giant 1 in red there. Okay. 1 on top, you need to write. 1 on bottom, you don't need to write. All right, so let's go to the next one. 2a, 2b. Parentheses. This one has parentheses. What is inside the parentheses? Negative 4 and x, right? That's step 6. I have 2 things on the inside. That's rule number 6. Rule number 6 says everything on the inside gets a power. Okay. Negative 4 gets a negative 2 power. X gets a negative 2 power. Okay. I know there are parentheses still, but there's nothing I can do on the inside anymore, so I'm going to move to negatives. Both of them have negative powers though, right? They got to move down. Negative 4 now, positive 2. Positive x, positive 2. Now, did the negative 4 change signs? No, because it's not an exponent. Only exponent change signs. What's on top? 1. Last step, negative 4 times negative 4 makes positive 16, x squared. Done. Now look at B. What's the difference between A and B besides the -5? Parentheses. There are no parentheses. So I don't have to distribute anything. I don't have to distribute a -1. Who has a -1 power? Just X. Just X. -5 doesn't have a -1 power. So because I can skip parentheses, I'm going to move this guy down. -5 stays on top. Why does it stay on top? Because it doesn't have a negative exponent. You're done. Okay. So that's, like I said, the rest of the problems are just pretty much using those to simplify as far as you can. Okay, so let's look at example 3A. Parentheses. Yes, it does have parentheses. What is inside the parentheses? A -3 and a q to the -3. Both of those guys are going to get a third power. Going to distribute that power to both. Oops, should be +3 on the outside. The bottom doesn't have any parentheses, so I'm just going to leave it alone for right now. Okay. So -3 to the third means -3 times -3 times -3, which is -27. Q to the -3 to the third power, what am I going to do with those two powers? Not add them. It's a power to a power, so we multiply them, yeah. So you get -9 power. So Q to the -9. The bottom stays the same because it didn't have any parentheses. Parentheses are done. Negative exponents. This guy is going to move down. This guy is going to move up. So I get -27, q to the +6, -6, q to the +9. No more negative exponents. Last step, simplify. -27 and -6. What's the biggest number I can divide them both by? -3, yeah. Divide this guy by -3, it becomes +9. Divide this guy by -3, it becomes +2. Last step, I got q's on top, q's on bottom. How do I get them together? Add, subtract, multiply, or divide. You're going to subtract them, right? So when we subtract them, we get -3. Wait, but I already did negative exponents. So this is what I do. Q to the 6th means I have q times q times q 6 times, right? Q to the 9th means I have q times q times q 9 times. When I cross them out, how many am I going to be left with? 3. Where are those going to be left, on top or bottom? So put them on bottom. 3 on the bottom. Done. Because this means q 6 times. This means q 9 times. 6, 7, When I cancel them out, there's 3 left on the bottom. Because when I subtract them, if I were to subtract 6 minus 9, I get negative 3. Well, negative means move it to the bottom. That's why there's 3 left on the bottom. Okay? All right, so now what I want you to do is try B. Try letter B on the next page. Try letter B. First step, parentheses. Inside the parentheses, I have a negative 3 and a b to the 4th. So each of those gets a squared. The bottom I'm going to leave alone for right now because it doesn't have any parentheses. So negative 3 times negative 3 makes positive 9. B. Am I going to add those, multiply those, subtract those? What am I going to do with those guys? Multiply, multiply. B to the 8th. Okay. No more parentheses. Next step, negative exponents. I do have one negative exponent. This guy on bottom needs to move up to the top. Okay, simplify. Well, 9 and negative 12 I can divide by 3. So if I divide them by 3, I get positive 3 and negative 4. How do I combine the b's? Add them. Done. Okay, 2 more problems. I'm not going to give you any extra problems today in your notes. We'll just do the last 2 and then we're done for today. All right. Okay, so what I want you to do is try letter C now. Try letter C. Give letter C a shot. You get it wrong, big deal. But try it. You might get it right. You probably will. Okay, so the bottom has parentheses. Inside the parentheses, I have 3 things. I have 3, R negative 3 power, and just C. So every guy, top is going to stay the same for right now. I'm not going to do anything to the top right now because it doesn't have any parentheses. So 3 is going to get a negative 5 power. R to the negative 3 is going to get a negative 5 power. And C is going to get a negative 5 power. Still have parentheses. Top, I'm just going to rewrite it. 3 to the negative 5. R to the negative 3 to the negative 5 power. I need to multiply those to make 15. C to the negative 5. No more parentheses. Negatives. This guy is going to move up. This guy is going to move down. This guy is going to move up. Three to the 5th times 15 that was already there. R to the 6th that was already there. C to the 5th that moved up. on the bottom. R to the 15th, that was already there, and C to the 8th, that needed to move down. These guys, I'm going to go to my calculator and multiply them. 3 to the 5th times 15. Because they're numbers. So 3 to the 5th times 15, 3,645. 3,645. Now I have the R's. When I cancel them out, how many are going to be left over? 9, right? I have 6 on top, 15 on bottom. I can cancel out 6. There's going to be 9 left over on bottom. So it's going to be R to the 9th. Last one are the C's. I have C 5 times, C 8 times. When I cross them out, I can cross out 5 of them. How many are going to be left over? 3. And where are they going to be left down, bottom or top? Bottom. Good. Done. Okay. Last one. What is the only thing inside the parentheses here? Is -3 inside the parentheses? No. So it's not going to get a power. If it doesn't already have a power, it's not going to get one. The -1 is only going to go with 4, with the W to the 4th. So W to the 4th times -1 power makes -4 power. Parentheses are gone. Negative exponents. J to the 6th is going to be on top because it's positive now. W to the 4th is going to be on bottom now because it's moved to the bottom, so it's positive. Now, can I cancel out any J's and W's? No, because there's only one J and there's only one W. And I can't reduce -3 and 5 because there's nothing that can divide them, so I'm done. Done. Okay. All right, so tape this in, page 33. Tomorrow we'll do some practice, and that's it. There you go. There you go.